Cape Fear Business Roundtable is sponsored by two branding partners located under one roof right here in southeastern North Carolina. Pioneer Strategies is a strategic communication firm focused on helping you build success through effective strategic communication. Pioneer Specialties is your promotional products partner, ready to help you through the entire process from product research through product delivery. For more information about our sponsors, visit capefearbusiness.com.
Welcome to Cape Fear Business Roundtable. I'm your host, Frank Williams, and today we have with us Josh Torbich of Christian Recovery Centers. Josh, thank you for being with us.
What a privilege. Yeah, thanks for inviting me.
And obviously, the name of this podcast is Cape Fear Business Roundtable, but we do occasionally focus on nonprofits that are doing good things here in our community, and that's what we're doing today. And Josh will tell you in a few minutes about his organization and what they do. But Josh, before we do that, tell us a little bit about yourself. Obviously, we're in a fast-growing place and lots of people moving in here from lots of places. So are you originally from here? And if not, how did you get here and where did you move here from?
No, so I was born and raised in Johnston County,
Okay.
and that's just south of Raleigh for those who don't know.
Where in Johnston County?
Smithfield
Oh, yeah.
area. Yeah.
I
so-
went to college with the current mayor of Smithfield. We had
Did
some
you
classes
really?
together, yeah.
Yeah. Well, that's my hometown, but you wouldn't recognize it today because just like Brunswick County, it's growing just as fast, I feel
Yes.
like.
Especially
Um,
the Clayton end of the county.
The Clayton end of the county is booming. Yeah. So I'm actually nestled right in between Clayton and Smithfield, closer to Smithfield, but in a town called Willow Springs.
I know where that is.
Yep. So that was my turf back in the day, and yeah, I ended up landing in Carolina Beach for the previous year, and then eventually landed here in Brunswick County,
Okay.
actually to attend the recovery program. Brunswick. It was then Brunswick Christian Recovery Centers. We had that small campus out there in Ash. It wasn't structured like what it is today. It was more of like a group home type format. I was 23 years old, and my parents finally made a very wise decision to pull the rug out from underneath of me and say, no more of these resources while we watch you kill yourself with your horrible drug addiction. So yeah, I came here for those resources and kind of reestablished myself.
And so you were a participant in the program that you now lead.
Yeah, absolutely. In
And
2013, checked in as a program resident. I was horribly addicted to alcohol and heroin, and I found freedom right there.
And a lot of people think about addictions in terms of things like heroin or cocaine or more true narcotics. And a lot of people underestimate the addictive power that alcohol can have on you. And that's something I'm sure you'll talk about later. But it's truly something that can get a hold of somebody and not let them go unless they make it a point to fight it.
Yeah, it's the number one killer, actually. Most people, just through what we've seen with the opioid settlements
Right.
across the nation and things like that, Oxycontin, and then now turning into things like heroin, and then now heroin doesn't exist. It's all fentanyl. That's gotten a lot of publicity, but alcohol still reigns as the number one killer of people when it comes to addiction.
And I'm sure we'll talk a little more about that as we dive in. But going back to some more personal stuff to start out with, obviously, we're going to talk about what you do for both a living and I think a passion during this podcast. But when you're not working, what are your favorite either things to do or places to go in southeastern North Carolina?
I have the most beautiful family, and I got a just turned 5-year-old and a 3-year-old. And then we actually have our third child. Casey and I have our third child due on the 20th of this month. So we're about to welcome number 3. But we are all about the swimming pool with those kids. So I found it a personal passion of mine to teach both of my kids to swim. Frank, I'm especially excited to say they're both able to cross the Pacific by themselves. No, it's just a joke, of course. But they are strong swimmers, and that was something that I've really spent the past couple years of my life. Every waking hour, whenever we've been able to have the opportunity, we spend our days in the pool.
And that's a good thing to do and good to spend time with family. I was in Boy Scouts years ago, and I thought I was a good swimmer until I went out for the swimming merit badge, and I realized I was a good short distance swimmer, but I was very tired by the time I earned the merit badge, but I was kind of glad I did it the first time because I'm not sure I would have tried it again. Well, tell us a little bit also about your career journey, and obviously you've kind of given us a little insight into how you landed in what is now Christian Recovery Center. But tell us about your journey. Anything else you want to share about that? What brought you to Carolina Beach, and then what brought you more over here, and how you wound up going from being a participant to being the executive director.
Yeah, thank you. I wound up in Carolina Beach as like my last failed attempt to pull myself up from my bootstraps. My mom was living in Carolina Beach at the time. She had been there for 5 or 6 years, and she invited me to come down and live with her. I was 22 years old, and most of my friends were graduating college, at that point and moving on with their lives. And I had obviously stalled dramatically in my life because of my alcohol and drug addictions. And then struggling with some sort of what you would consider onset mental health disruptions, that I had to find some sense of freedom from. But as those things started progressing in my life, I finally got to a place where I was willing to step into getting some support and landed here in Brunswick County. I honestly picked this place just because it was close to home. So
Right.
I didn't really have any great ambitions to reshape my life. I was really, if I'm honest about it, I was just looking for a place to lay low for a little bit, get my family back in my hip pocket. Was met by the kindest Baptist pastor. His name's Pastor Larry. And he was living his dream, helping 14 or so folks at a time. And I became one of the folks there who just really dug in to the program. And when time came to graduate and go, there was no other staff or really opportunities, but I could tell that Pastor Larry needed some help and he asked if I would stay. So I stayed very informally, if that makes sense,
Right.
just to help. So I always joke, and I really was the den mother. There was no position or job occupation, nothing like that. I just became the den mother of the place, but God really started to bless it, and it started to grow and create more opportunities. And as it started to actually develop some sort of formal structure, we eventually became what's considered a drug and alcohol addiction treatment center, registered with the state. And then as we traveled through the different onsets that we had, we were able to invest in ourselves to create some additional revenue streams, to be able to actually start opening up our pool of resources and be able to offer a more robust programmatic approach for the folks who we served. And the thing that I think is really relevant about today's conversation is where about half of our revenue comes from is through 3, 4 different small businesses. So in 2021, coming off the back end of a major disruption from COVID, we had a potential threat that took away like 75% of our revenue through these contract services that we accomplished, going to different fairs and different PGA golf tournaments, NASCAR races, things, and working to help support the program ministries. So we formulated at that time the landscaping company, the cleaning company, and then set our sights on opening up a thrift store, even though we didn't do that until a couple years later. So that really became a huge pursuit of my life, is working with well-suited business leaders from this community. And you would be surprised if I started telling you about the people who came to support me, because I was a pizza delivery driver, so I didn't know anything about this. But good mentorship with good business practices came and taught me how to structure these small businesses and how to develop systems that would be able to hold the different teams accountable and be able to employ a different structure so that they can go out and generate revenue for the ministry. Even had a local attorney who volunteered to help me with the business structure, of everything, how the nonprofit would own the businesses and different things like that. And then lo and behold, those things continued to grow. We opened up a thrift store and then a second and then a third thrift store. And now it's hard to believe it, but those businesses combined will do about 5.5 million this year in revenue, which is phenomenal when you consider that you can take everything they net and give it back to how we provide these free residential services.
Are most of the do the participants in your program actually work in those businesses, or how does that work? I know it's probably a mixed bag as far as
Yeah.
who you have working in those, but how does that, what is their involvement?
So it's like the second chance school for the folks who are graduating our programs. A lot of them use it as their first opportunity for
Right.
employment. Our program has 18 to 24 months of reentry support built into it. So at that point, they have to get a job. They have to be working full time. They have to be moving back into a community standard that they can independently thrive. And they get about 18 to 24 months to build that for themselves. So yeah, a lot of them will find their first career opportunity back with us just so they can build a little bit of resume activity, something to show to the next employer that they need to lead into for meaningful employment. These trades that we offer partner with Brunswick Community College, and they offer the work-based learning environment for the residents to get their occupational certifications while they're traveling through our treatment and recovery program. So if somebody's participating in landscaping activity, they'll go through the work-based learning activity there. They'll graduate with a human resource development certificate. It's less about landscaping as a career. It's more about, are you a good employee in general, and do you understand the concepts or the practices of being a good employable person?
I think that's something that ought to be taught in every school of any kind for anybody, because it's amazing the horror stories I hear from people, from business owners, about people who come in and have the technical knowledge, but they don't understand things like how to show up. that just the basics of, as you mentioned, being a good employee. And we just, as you know, finished up Mental Health Awareness Month. I know you attended our Rotary Mental Health Summit that we did on the first day of May. And I think there's such an interrelation between mental health and addiction. Sometimes one's the cause and the other one's the effect, but I think that it plays both ways. And I've seen people who became addicted because they were trying to self medicate their mental health issue. And I've seen people that I know who develop mental health challenges because of their addiction. And I'm sure you've seen all of that. But we've talked about almost everything except your actual program. So tell us a little bit about how your program works, who you serve, and if somebody were entering your program on day one, what their path forward would look like.
Yeah, thank you. So we get a lot of our referrals that are coming from the local community, and then obviously from places like the hospital, the judicial system, things like that. We are a voluntary program, even though we will see referrals that come from a court order, specifically like drug court in our local community. We serve a large population that are coming from those judicial involvement practices. So that's kind of how you get in the door with us. People will put in an initial application, and then through that process, we'll go through a CCA, a clinical assessment with them to understand if we're the right place for their care. When they first enter into our programs, they're going to go through 4 to 6 weeks of psychiatric stabilization. That's working with our licensed nurse practitioner to make sure that their original involvement is truly working towards a place where they're stable enough to receive the recovery services. So that first 4 to 6 weeks is referred to as our motivational track, and it's called that for a reason. We're trying to motivate the individual, address enough of their mental health needs as well as their physical needs so that they can be well enough to attend the recovery portion, which is the more extensive, more laborsome, and work that takes a lot longer to accomplish. So after the motivational track for about 4 to 6 weeks, they'll graduate from that and they'll move into the recovery phases 1, 2, and 3, which is making up the entire stint of our program, what we refer to as our program. So after the recovery program in phases 1, 2, or 3, they've been exposed to things like workforce redevelopment program, like we were just talking about. One of my favorite things about the workforce redevelopment program is the class structure that they have attached to it. Like the first class that they take is called Gratitude for Work. I can be a better employee when I'm grateful for my job. That's the first class that they teach through
I
that.
also think that ought to be taught in every school everywhere. I
Yeah,
mean,
like I have a job and I'm grateful for it is one of the things. So that's a major piece, because if you were to go around and sum it up, you say, hey, how many of you guys or girls that were serving here in the recovery program need to work a full-time job after you graduate the program? They'd all raise their hand. Very, very few are moving into a place where they don't have to work a full-time job. So obviously income mobility, the financial literacy classes that we offer, in addition to all of the recovery program. Also at this point, they're attached to one of our peer support specialists that are specifically assigned to them, and they're working a program called Aspire. Aspire works across 6 dimensions of well-being inside of 56 indicators for overall well-being. And as they travel through their program, it's structured kind of like a stoplight. So they'll start out with some of their resources being in red, or some areas in their life being in red. And a few of the areas are like an income and employment, motivation and goal setting, spirituality, health and overall well-being. They've been neglecting a lot of their health and being, things that we can't really resolve in a short period of time. We really elongate the recovery program process. So 6 months at that, what we're starting to see is by the time they progress through the different phases of the program, a lot of those reds that were bad indicators are now starting to turn to greens, where they're in a place of stability in them. That's our job as the provider, to try to get them into a place of what's considered overall well-being. Doesn't mean they got $1 million in the bank. It just means that we've created a solid enough platform for them to launch off into a place of stability from. And that's it.
I think that's truly a long-term process, and we live in a society where everybody wants to put a microwavable solution on everything, and it's not something that things that you microwave get cold just as fast as they get hot when you take them out. And I think it's truly a long-term process. Now, is your program a residential program, or do you have some of both, or how does that work from the person?
So mainly residential. We do have a few different non-residential touch points. After they complete that recovery program, about 80% of our program graduates after 6 months request to move into what's called phase 4, which is 18 to 24 months of reentry. Still residential. I'm sure most people on today's call would understand what like an Oxford house or a transitional house is. This is kind of like one of those on steroids. So we still provide transportation, all of their general supplies, even 3 meals a day for them and snacks, but they're able to maintain a normal existence, get a full-time job, work independently with an educational institution of their choosing. Some of them choose to work with a local seminary that we have a partnership with and move forward in that way. Some of them choose to go back to BCC and get a trade school program. They can access that Phase 4 reentry program, 18 to 24 months. And our goal with them is when they move to transition back into society, they're moving into an independent contributor of society.
I think that's what I would want for anybody who's struggling with something like this is, you don't just want to put a Band-Aid on it. You want to help them truly, as my pastor would say, address the cause. And, he says, I'm a root cause person. I don't want to talk about the symptom. I want to fix the problem. And one of the things we talked about at the mental health summit was people being willing to confront their situation and talk to someone and get the treatment that they need. So it sounds like you're providing a great service. And I just hope that if there's anybody who does watch this that feels like they could benefit from this, that they will reach out to you. Now, if someone either wanted to reach out to you for themselves or to find out if you might be a fit for someone they knew, how do they contact you guys?
You can call 910-287-HELP, and you can also go on our website and just fill out a survey that asks, are we right for you? If you're interested. If you're in crisis or you're going through something that you need some immediate support, as long as it's not an emergency situation that the hospital will be relevant for, but you can call us. We do have an entry-level care continuum housing. So even without a firm commitment to the overall program I just described, we can still help you on a transitional basis find the right resource that's right for you. And that's an extension of our warming facility services as well, where the temperature drops below 40 degrees. So there's a couple other pockets that we serve the community in that would be really relevant to folks. And it's all free. We have the businesses that are high contributors of how we're able to maintain that revenue and growth. We do have an allocation from the county for the opioid settlement dollars. Those aren't taxpayer dollars. Those are private settlement funds that come through. And then, of course, we have the other end of those, which are just general contributions, churches that support us, individuals, other businesses who contribute meaningful to us. So yeah, being able to offer this to this scale at 240 residential beds at no cost to the individual is huge.
You mentioned your thrift stores earlier. Where are those located, and how can someone find out how to take advantage of those or your other businesses that you have?
Sure, thank you. All on the website would be the easiest place to access. Every business has different forms you can fill out. I gotta say, if you want to give anything to the thrift stores, they have awesome and easy to access donation pickup sites, and we'll even send trucks out to get them from you. We have one that's right next to the Walmart in Charlotte. It used to be the Bedland in Charlotte. Also, a little side note, we kept the mattress contracts open. So if you're looking to purchase very nice, brand new mattresses, you come in there and you can find those as well. We have another one off of Holden Beach Road. And then we have another one at the corner where the Food Line is in Sunset Beach off of Seaside Road. And then the landscaping and the cleaning services launched specifically from Charlotte here, but they serve the greater area.
And if someone, whether it's an individual or a business, wanted to support what you do, what kind of support? Obviously, besides you can use financial support. I mean, every nonprofit can. But what other ways can someone support what you're doing?
I would say one of the more creative ways that people decide to partner with us is allowing us to come in and serve as their choice of service. So they will contract the companies to do things. They were going to spend the money already in that way and direct it towards us in a way that we can help support the overall mission that we're doing. Second way is volunteers. One of the things that I said earlier in our conversation that I think is worth highlighting again is that I had some very, very wise and retired people. Not even all of them were like board members or anything. Some of them were truly just believers in what we did, but they came in and they really helped me. Like they mentored me. They taught me how to structure these businesses. They told me how to forecast some things preemptively, that would be possible pitfalls at different levels of growth as we scaled up. When we started this, we were annual budget $175,000 a year. Now this year we're an $8 million nonprofit. So as you build and grow those things, we had so many people who took it upon themselves to make sure we matured and seasoned in all the right areas while we grew. So I would say that that's a huge contribution to the ministry overall. And then just understanding what we do and taking a pause maybe every now and then to go and check out some of the most recent posts on our Facebook page so you can kind of see what the activity is. because someone will come to you. I always say this, Frank, it's kind of a catch 22. Nobody really knows a lot about us oftentimes until they need us. And
Right.
by that time, they wish they would have known us sooner. So even just having a relationship with us about how prevalent mental health and substance use disorders are inside of our community, we're a great resource and a great community to know.
And obviously, there are lots of Rotary and Kiwanis groups and things like that in Brunswick County. I'm assuming you're available to go speak to them and tell them about what you do.
But yeah,
And
anytime, absolutely.
and I will, when I post this podcast, I'll make sure your contact information and your website are linked so that if people want to reach out to you, they know how. Is
Thank
there
you.
anything else that we haven't talked about that you think people ought to know about Christian recovery centers?
Yeah, one of the things that I think would be worth mentioning while we wrap up is just the principles that we're built on. We truly believe that we're supposed to be the hands and feet of Jesus to the folks inside of a community that really needs us. And one of the things that I think the community's really responded well to in that area while we've grown, what some would say rapidly, matches pace with the county maybe.
Right.
But while we've continued to grow, we've continued to try to stay true to that heart. And one of the ways that we most commonly reflect that heart is that 60% of our 100 or so employees are graduates of our own program, myself included, of course, but there's a whole lot of us. So there's a major employable population here that we're graduating every day. And Frank, a lot of them are becoming citizens here. A lot of them truly recovered, and we have the testimonies to prove it across the entire county, are investing their newfound freedom and who they are and who they become back into Brunswick County to make it a better place to live. And the business partnerships that we have with different companies locally here in the community are huge. They're coming out to hire our folks directly, one, because they feel like there's a sense of altruism there. Two, because they want to give somebody an opportunity to step back into life from a position of strength. There's some great employers who have come here to give our folks a second chance who maybe in most cases shouldn't have given them a second look. And I think that's a huge win of what Brunswick County looks like altogether.
I think that's, a great work. And, when someone goes through a program like this, it doesn't help them if when they get finished, they can't find a job and they can't go back out because someone's holding a stigma over their head. And I think that's tremendous that you have businesses involved that are working with you in that way. Well, to switch gears a little bit and go back to close it out with a couple more personal things, what have you learned during your career and your career path that you wish you had known when the day that you started out and that got out of high school or got out of college or whatever?
Yeah, thank you. I would say that the little standards are always important, no matter how big you grow. One of the things that we're in need of revisiting right now, little standards. Things like how we park our vehicles we have a fleet now of about 42 vehicles.
Right.
We're revisiting these concepts around, hey, we've grown so much, but we've lost traction on some of the little things, how we leave the vehicles at the end of the day, the little standards around approaching how you deliver a quality of service. One of the things that you'll always be familiar with is when you step into Chick-fil-A, you're in a Chick-fil-A, right? Because every
Yes.
time you say thank you, they respond with,
My pleasure.
there you go.
I haven't been to Chick-fil-A since this morning, so.
There you go. Yeah. But I mean, so we do, as a leadership team, we have a lot of conversations recently here about how, okay, so we're super proud of what we're doing, but it's not like we shouldn't rest on our laurels because there's a quality refinement that has to take
Right.
place if we plan to move to the next level. And I think that in a lot of businesses in the community, you see a sense of complacency that sets in, especially in the nonprofit world. I think this happens. One of the things that I think has been a gift to us is that we didn't have some pot of government money that was always funding us. So we didn't wake up one morning and say, oh yeah, our budget's made already. Like we
Right.
always had to energetically work towards creative ways to lower our expenses and then obviously generate more revenue if we want it to grow. I think that keeps someone hungry. So reminding myself that to stay hungry, make sure you're pointed towards the little things that overall affect quality. That's something that I wish I would have never lost my sight line on because now I'm revisiting it over the past couple years.
Well, I also think given the population that you serve, you're serving people who are trying to get their life back on track and put an addiction that's probably held them hostage in their past. And those are things to model for them as well as doing the little things right and, delivering value. And those are the kind of things that will help them as they re-enter a more productive life to have those as something that that you've modeled for them and shown the way on as well.
Yes. Yeah.
Well, final question, and I always like to ask this. I think it's a good takeaway for whoever's watching or listening to this. Either what podcast do you listen to, what books do you like to read or currently reading, or what do you like to watch on TV, either for entertainment or for personal development, whatever you want to share.
So I just finished reading Rich Dad Poor Dad, and it was a phenomenal read. More on the financial
Right.
spectrum of things, but I was very interested in that. I started playing that game Cash Flow with my family. If you've never played it before, it'll give you some fun time if you don't mind keeping a balance sheet. But another thing that I'll say is I obviously want to give a plug. I have a podcast, Behind the Sit Go. It's one of the few things that I don't mind listening to myself on. So I'll go back and I'll say, wow, okay, I didn't hear that during the conversation, and I'll listen to it again. It's obviously in the realm of addiction recovery services. We bring different guests on there and talk about different themes as is associated to mental health, substance use disorder, so on and so forth.
And is your podcast on the usual podcast platforms, or where do people find it?
Oh, yeah. Yeah, absolutely. And Spotify, Apple Podcast. We do a filming over on YouTube as well, so you
Okay.
can tune in and watch it in person. Watch it live on YouTube.
Perfect. Perfect. Well, Josh, thank you for joining us. Is there anything else you want to say as we close out?
No, thank you for having me.
And thank you for being with us. And for those who are watching or listening, we hope you'll follow the podcast. You can visit capefearbusiness.com and follow us on YouTube or your favorite podcast platform. And thank you for tuning in. And Josh, thank you for joining us.
Thank you.